Welcome to the Workforce Navigator. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we have a very special guest on. We have on Darlene Hunter. Now, Darlene, there's a lot of things that make up Darlene. You are the VP head of HR at Eastridge Workforce Solutions. You are also a very accomplished 3-time published author, and they're all in the area of motivational books. And I think that's your passion, and that's why you're in HR, and your passion is people and motivating people. And what we're going to be talking about today is, I think, one of the most important things that we can be doing in our companies, because we all know that our companies, it's all about the people. It's our high performance teams that make the biggest difference. And so if we're not taking care of, and we're not fostering those teams in the right way, then we're missing the biggest competitive advantage we have. And that's what you want to talk about today, is how do we create a competitive advantage in our companies through company culture. And culture is one of those words that kind of used too much and it's lost its meaning, but we're going to put some teeth into it today. But before we start, if you wouldn't mind just expanding on your background a little bit more.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for the opportunity, Steve. I'm very excited to be here today. So my background actually started in retail. So when I was 17 in high school, I jumped into retail and stayed into retail about 30-ish years. And that retail actually taught me so much about all kinds of people, really gave me the passion to help people and to drive those cultures that I talk about today.
I'm going to jump right in because we have so much to talk about here. But if you wouldn't mind, let's just start out with culture. And it's that buzzword. It's like value. It's like lost meaning. Can you put meaning back into culture? Can you explain what culture means to you in context of the business?
Absolutely. So when I think about culture, I think about community. I think about those who live together. I think about feeling warm and welcoming. I recently went to London and Paris. It was amazing. And so to experience culture means to be able to see how other people live, how they present themselves, how we greet each other, how we embrace each other. When you transfer that over to the workplace, the culture is the environment that we all work in. We always talk about it's cultural. What does that really mean? It's the norms and the values that we hold important to us as individuals. And that's what the workplace should feel like. What does the entire organization feel like? Is it comfortable? Is it welcoming? Do people feel like they belong in that space? To me, that's what culture is all about.
You painted such a vivid picture by talking about you just done international travel. And when we do that and we go into a different country, we often feel a very different culture, a different vibe. And it's either going to be something that you really love and you want to get more of, but culture can have the opposite effect too. And that opposite effect in business can mean there's two ends of the spectrum in terms of these high performance teams that we were talking about. It can help you attract the right people and retain the right people. And since people is everything, can you tell us a little bit, attach it to our business, like our goals, like creating long-term sustainable businesses? Why is culture so important?
So culture shapes the environment. And so what we do know that when people feel respected, valued, welcome, belonged, they will produce more. I always say they will move a mountain for you. So we know when people are happy, feel secure in the workplace, production increases versus the opposite. And so when we talk about the competitive advantage of the employee value proposition, we really talk about what is the whole circle for the employee. What will make them want to be here, stay here? What makes them want to bring others aboard to this organization? Because when they're happy as anything in life, you excel. And so when you invest in your people, create an environment that they feel welcome, that they are creative, they're innovative, they want to come to work every day, they want to win. And who does not want employees on their team that want to win to help a company to be successful? But it starts with the people. And we all know that it's the people that drive the business. That's why it's critically important to make sure we are investing in the people, the well-being of the people. The heart of a company is absolutely all day long, the people.
So 100%. What's interesting, I'd love to have you comment on this, is go back 10 years, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and I won't say how long we've both been in the business, but we've seen that. Nobody was talking about culture as a competitive advantage. Our employees these days, they're interviewing us for that cultural fit as much as we're interviewing them. But that didn't used to be 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Why has it changed so much? And why is that a good thing?
So people change, things change, and companies have to change with it. I remember years ago where a certain group of people had to wear a certain color suit, a certain color shirt, and a certain type of tie. And then things changed. There was where a certain group had to present themselves maybe with how their hair looked, what they actually wore. Now it's not like that anymore. And as you mentioned, people are interviewing us as a place where they want to work. And I think a lot of companies saw that early on. I can mention Google. I remember with my son at one time, he was at a work environment and had to stop by, and he came out and he had on like shorts and flip flops. And I was like, so old school, that really happened back then. But what they asked even people to do is not to come to an interview with a suit on because it was not their culture, it was not their environment. So it's important now as generations change, and this time we are more generational levels at the workplace than we've ever been to meet people where they are. And it's really not about having, I remember in one environment, you couldn't have tattoos and we couldn't hire people that they were visible or you had to hide them. No more. It's really about the work and the individual and understanding that culture makes the difference to excel an organization to the next level because it's the people who are happy and satisfied and warm and welcomed that will drive the success and the competitive advantage from the companies that's not doing that.
It's interesting. We had a gentleman that was on the podcast maybe a year ago now, but a PhD, and he actually proved exactly what you're saying is that if we focus on our employees and create the right culture for them and that employee engagement rises, he saw that customer engagement rose and so did revenue. So everything that you're talking about here has a very direct correlation directly to the bottom line of the business. But leaders don't always see that. Like the executive team doesn't always see that. In fact, a lot of the time, we're more looked upon as a support department. We have a hard time getting a seat at the table. Yet I have definitely talked to CEOs and executive team members that are huge believers in the power and what you're talking about, but there is still this gap. And a lot of us that are listening in here are having to deal with this leadership gap. In your mind, what is that gap and what do we do?
So I want to come back to that gap in just a moment, but I received my doctorate degree this year, and my dissertation was around leadership in diverse U.S. contact centers and the impact on retention and morale. And what I found, as you just mentioned, is that when we are transparent with pay, when we are open about expectations, when we meet people where they are, retention increases and so does morale. And what is the bottom line with those two? We know that when the morale is high, again, it goes back to productivity, it goes back to profitability for the organization, it goes back to happier clients, as you just mentioned. When we talk about retention, we talk about the cost of replacing individuals over and over again, whether they leave on their own or because they're not happy and not producing, we manage them out. In any event, when we have retention that is increased and morale increase, it makes a tremendous difference in the bottom line results of the organization. And so when you talk about leadership not really understanding that, it's important that they actually have the ability to see how everything aligns to the profitability of their EBITDA. We have employees who are producing more. We're bringing on more clients. We're increasing revenue. Our EBITDA increases, and profitability is what every organization wants. Again, it ties back to the people. And so if we can help leaders determine what the gap is, and rather it's the fact that we're not offering employees what they actually need, that we're not investing in their development, that we're not investing in the engagement of the employees, whatever that gap is, it will behoove all of us to identify it very quickly in each organization and build a bridge to close that gap. Because again, the investment in the people is the investment in the organization. The return on investment, investing in people, will show up in the results all day long, all the time.
What I love is that you started talking the language of the executive suite, saying EBITDA, what we do and how you tie it to the core KPIs that the executive, the C-suite, is looking at and how they're held accountable to the board. That's what we've got to do. We've got to start translating what we do so it makes sense to our internal customers, the people that we're trying to please internally. And if you were like a CEO, you have to look at things like net reoccurring revenue, NRR, and it's so tied to customer retention. But we don't have the same focus on employee retention. But customer retention and employee retention should be equal in terms of importance. And so this culture that we're talking about is so important for attracting and retaining, like you're saying, the high performance teams. If we can put it on par, like you just did, with EBITDA and NRR and revenue growth, then I think what we're doing is we're advocating for ourselves. How important is that? Because none of us really got into the business and thinking we got to be internal salespeople. We're going to have to really sell what we do. It's not going to just come naturally to us. How important is that?
It's very important. I think that, again, it goes back to really understanding the entire picture. What makes a successful organization? At the end of the day, people have to be in the top three, because the people are the ones that actually will help increase the revenue from the client. And as we shape what our environments look like, our culture, as we go back to the beginning, then we know that will help increase the profitability of an organization. It's so important that we sometimes step away from the drive of bottom line results and then talk about how can we get them through the avenue of the people. What is missing? How can we motivate them, inspire them to get the results that we're looking for? And in so many different ways. I think when we think about it, we grew up where demanding really worked. So if you're a driver in a disc dominant D, we kind of function that way, and let's just push. We are losing a lot of people because we are not flexing our communication style to, again, help our employees understand why they're valued, why their role is important, and how they're contributing to the organization's overall profitability. Who doesn't want to come to work knowing that you're making a tremendous difference in the bottom line and that you are so important for us to hit these numbers? We need you. So you come into work every day excited about being a part of something bigger than just your desk, just your role, just what you do. To get them to understand that, they feel so valued that we could not have done this without you. And how incredible is that to make people feel valued, to get all of us to the next level in terms of our return on investment, our EBITDA, our profitability, our expansion, everything that encompasses a successful organization.
And I remember from one of our last conversations that you talked about through advocacy, we can create psychological safety. And I've never heard those two put together. Please put those together, explain what you meant by that, because everything you just talked about was advocating for our employees. How does that create psychological safety?
So I'm super excited that you asked me that question, because I am the proud founder and CEO of a company called Employee Shield. And I started that company in 2023, and it really is all about advocacy. It's actually allowing each employee in each organization to have their own HR advocate on their side. And so, what's important about that is there are times when employees are frightened to go to HR or concerned about if they raise a flag, they may be retaliated against. So Employee Shield actually offers advocates. It helps coach employees on how to have conversations. It encourages them in terms of their career path and career growth. And it really has a place for them to provide psychological safety. And what that actually means is that we give them a space where they can vent, and then we give them the tools and resources to have an intelligent, informed conversation with their leaders around the struggles, issues, or concerns that they're having in the workplace. Ultimate goal is to keep them in their jobs, help them to be promoted, and help the organization they are pouring into grow and be profitable. And so I love the fact that we are advocates for those who feel like they don't have someone to advocate for them. And because of that, they feel safe and protected. And that's where the psychological safety comes in.
Without mentioning anybody's name or anything, is there a story that you can tell us about where there was a situation where somebody really needed to have that psychological safety? Or how does that tell us a story about the impact of Employee Shield and providing the psychological safety?
Absolutely. So there are occasions that I mentioned where people may be fearful to go to the HR or to the leaders because they may be fearful of retaliation. Everybody needs their job, particularly right now. And so we had someone come to us and they really believed that they were entitled to get a pay increase. But some cultures believe that they should just be grateful for a job, that they should never ask for anything unless it's given to them. And so, although they may have additional responsibilities, they feel that it would be fair for them to get an increase. They would never ask for it because culturally they were taught that's not how we do it. So we coached them around having a conversation, building up a platform, a document that really supported what they were doing extra, how they were shaping some of the projects, and so they were able to take that document to share why they believed they were entitled to a increase, and they received it. And so they came back and said, it wasn't as hard as I thought. Again, when you have someone in your corner in life, I would not have ever been able to achieve my doctoral degree without the support of my family and friends. They encouraged me when I wanted to give up. This company would have lost a great employee if we did not step in and advocate for herself and support her with documentation that was factual. And they thought themselves that she was entitled to that. And so it was a win all the way around.
See, that's great. It's this kind of support. What you're doing is you're just laying the foundation for how we take care of our employees. And there was something else that you had said. You say so much that I have to write it down. I'm trying to remember to come back to it. But when you were talking about EBITDA, I remember from our previous conversation, you were talking about empathy and leading with empathy while driving EBITDA. And I've never heard these two terms put together. So if you could explain that, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. When we about empathy and accountability, it seems like there's a disconnect in there because can we hold people accountable and still have empathy? In my career, I have terminated some people that have hugged me and thanked me for helping them make the decision that it wasn't a good fit. Not that they were a bad person, just wasn't a good fit. And so when we talk about empathy, we talk about putting yourself in someone else's shoes, understanding how someone might feel in a situation. That's all empathy really is. It doesn't mean that accountability can't happen because you have a culture of care. Absolutely, we show up every day to do a job that we're getting paid to do, and that's the expectation. But could you care about the fact that their mother may be sick, or their child may be sick, or they could have a bad day? One of the things that I feel blessed for the privilege of going through coaching that Eastridge has provided for us. And one of the things that I learned in that coaching is to, when you're meeting with someone, asking them, could I provide feedback? And so it gives the person the opportunity to say yes or no. The reason why we ask, it could be a bad day, that they could say, today's not really a good day for me to receive feedback. And so we would reschedule another time. But it gives them the opportunity. That's empathy, helping to understand where a person is. It does not mean that we can't hold you accountable to your KPIs or your goals or expectations, but it's how we do it. So I think we all grew up with, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Could we say it with a mindset of a culture of care? That people understand that we care about their well-being in every aspect. Although we expect them to do the job, we want you to understand that we care about you as part of the team in this organization. And it's that simple.
I was talking to a CEO on this podcast, and he's reiterating what you said. And he said it like this. He said, if the team feels like I have their back, they'll jump through hoops. They'll be so glad and they'll love being a part of this. So that's what I was thinking about when you said that. It's interesting because we think of, when we're acquiring talent, that it's like a privilege for them to come and interview here and look at all these candidates. Let's make our choice. We don't really flip that around and think, hey, they're interviewing us just as much. Have you found that to be the case? And then how does that make you feel as the head of HR? Like, how do you approach acquiring talent differently, understanding that dynamic?
So I think that the pandemic taught us a lot about employees and understanding that it is the people that is running the company in terms of producing all day long. And so I think that when we're talking about recruiting, that we present, even in the interview, a culture of care, understanding what we're looking for, sharing our culture, and really understanding that people have choices. And especially when we're looking for top talent, why would they want to work for us? And really understanding the employee value proposition is critical. Do we have one? Does our organization really put thought into the employee value proposition? What does our benefits look like? I'm always saying to our benefits manager, what can we offer that some others don't? How are we caring for our employees? What's different about us? Why do they want to work for us? And so in terms of learning and development, career opportunities, everything that goes into a whole individual, when you think about employee value proposition, that entire circle, what are the components that puts us in the competitive advantage? And how are we winning in terms of getting top talent? Why would someone want to be here? That's behind everything that we present. Why would they want to be here with us? And that's where we need to focus. Not that we're grateful that we're getting you because you want a job. That's the whole wrong approach. It's really helping people understand that we would be blessed to have them as part of the team, contributing to the whole of our EBITDA, our success, and our profitability. And we would love to have you as part of the team. So, Steve, when you think about that, my family is all about sports and particularly the Philadelphia Eagles. And so when you think about, we all watch the draft. We all want someone who is going to help us to get to the Super Bowl. That's how we should approach recruitment. We want someone who wants to be on our team, who can contribute to the team, and that would love being here. Think about the cities that are recruiting individuals. That's how we should look at recruiting, that we're really getting someone who wants to be here, that is stellar for all the reasons that they want to be with us, we want to be with them.
You've done this a number of times, but as companies, we think all the time about how do we create the competitive advantages to attract more customers. We look at their needs deeply. We assess the challenges that they're going through and how do we help solve that. What you just said is that we need to be doing that for acquiring talent. Like, how are we positioning ourselves as a business to not only acquire new customers, but to acquire talent? We should be putting the same kind of rigor to both ends of the spectrum, because it doesn't matter if we have really great clients. If we don't have the teams, we won't keep them. If we don't have the right people, we won't service them. In the end, what you're talking about here is that's the biggest competitive advantage we have is our people. Is that a good takeaway from like everything we've been talking about here?
Absolutely. So it's so funny because when we talk about sports, we talk about the fact that how come the team is not as good as it was last year? And my husband might say, because they traded away 3 of the people, or we lost 5 people. And so guess what? The team who won the Super Bowl last year is not the same team. Exactly in line with us winning and again in organizations. Do we have the right people who want to be here? Are we recruiting the talent that would make a difference? And what do we have to offer them? Because when someone has an open trade, they may leave a great team to go somewhere else because it's better for them. So how can we retain that person in our organization, on our team, so we can continue to win? If the C-suite could look at it like that, we won the Super Bowl, we hit our numbers in the last 2 years. Do we have the same people? Are we keeping our talent? Or are we losing talent to our competitors? And looking at it that way, how can we make sure that Darlene is going to stay here on the winning team so we can keep winning? That's a different perspective, because we try to retain our client, our top clients. Do we do the same for our people?
I have to tell you, that is one of the best analogies that I have ever heard. I talked to a lot of people on this podcast because we talked about the leadership gap up front, that they're not understanding the importance of the people and then the importance of the HR function, which basically organizes and orchestrates that. Like marketing and sales orchestrates getting and acquiring, go to market, getting and acquiring new customers. We're the people that organize and orchestrate everything that is needed to acquire the new people. That should put us at a seat at the table that is very revered and very respected. That was great. Thank you. I wanted to ask you the one last question, and that might have been the answer. I don't know, but I'm still going to ask the question. This is it. We've talked about so much. In our poor human brains, we can only remember about 2 or 3 things at a time. If there was one thing that you wanted all the executives that are consuming this podcast right now to remember and to take away, what would that one thing be?
I would say, what defines your culture of care? What does it look like? How are you caring for your employees? And really dive deep into, is it working? Do your employees feel like the culture of care that you defined, do they feel like they are in a culture of care? Are we walking the walk and talking the talk?
I think that's phenomenal. And I have to tell you, the whole mission of this podcast is just to bring from different industries and different leaders, different perspectives, different insights on how do we create high performance teams and high performance then companies. And if we all can do, that's the rising tide that lifts all the boats. And I think you were a tsunami today. I think you did just a fantastic job. But I know people will have questions. Is it appropriate if I give out a link to your LinkedIn profile so people could reach out to you?
Absolutely. I would love to engage and have some hearty conversation around creating that culture.
Darlene, thank you very much for coming on and sharing. I just wanted to say how much we appreciate it.
Oh, Steve, this was amazing. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. As you can tell, I'm so passionate about what I do.